Thanks for taking the time. And I can't believe, Rob, that it's been 14 years since you've gone.
Yeah, I've been to the one in Pasadena, but that was like understanding the landscape of the conference. I'm excited to visit Wilmington soon.
And I know that you've been in digital forensics and expert services for more than 20 years now.
Yes.
I can only imagine the amount of change that you've seen. Like, what stands out most to you?
I think people are getting more interested in trying to cull the data that we are required to collect at the time of collection or shortly after, because there's a large volume of data that we're encountering, right? I mean, the average person has either 250 gigabytes, 1 terabyte, 2 terabyte drives. And when you look at that on local media versus even the cloud, it's an enormous footprint, digital footprint that people carry. So we really have to think about the different ways to do our work, right? But also work with our clients in a very smart but efficient way, and most importantly, defensible way, so that this data gets accepted into a court.
Now, these days, is there anything that isn't digital evidence?
Well, I think a lot of cases that are now in play involve electronic evidence, and it's always been like that, over the course of time. We're just having to do a lot more connecting of the dots. There's a lot more data sources, right? That's the other thing that has changed, is we've gone from several data sources where, as an individual, maybe I had my home computer, I had some external media, external devices, and then I had my email. So my computer, I've got maybe some hard drives on the side, and then my email, and that was it. And now I've got wearables, IoT. There's just a lot of different things that we use that we don't even know what's being saved out there, but we have the ability to track this stuff. Even the ability now to open your garage door and let Amazon in when you're not even home, to leave packages inside versus on your doorstep. Because we all know going on with the doorstep stuff, and people are now recording on the Ring cameras and everything else. So just a lot of technology that we're using that we really need a better handle on. Not only what's it tracking, but how do we get access to that information to be able to download it, export it, use it for court.
Wow, you listing all of that is amazing. I forgot about all the wearables and everything else that you need to deal with now.
I'm wearing 2 items right now that I'm able to look at on my phone, and it tracks heart rate, it tracks number of steps, your GPS location. Again, it's how much information each person is generating. What's your digital footprint? And then on our day-to-day, like what we're doing, LinkedIn, through our email communication, through our various chats, right? We're no longer just using telephones to communicate. We're on computers doing video chats like this. Where do those get recorded? How easily is that able to be gathered so that we could explain to the relevant parties what information we have available for whatever they're looking for?
And I bet, Rob, that so many people are fascinated with your line of work these days. I feel like between crime podcasts, streaming shows, the public's curiosity is really peaked. What are some of the most common questions you get asked when people find out what you do?
A lot of fascination with what's going on based on stories that you see in the media, right? So like that trumps a lot of this stuff. And we've had some pretty prolific cases. I live on Long Island. So you probably know about that case where we've had a perp that was out there for a long period of time committing crimes, murders in the area. So we had that case, and then we have the cases like the Murdoch case in South Carolina, the Iowa campus case as well. So a lot of the questions are, hey, what's up with this story and hear about all the cell phone usage and how that was used to track down people's activities around these events, and cell phone towers and orientation of phones and different tasks that were being performed on the devices. And then you start thinking about there are other devices that are used in the home, and the connecting of the dots. So the questions that I get asked are, what do you think about this? There's just a lot of things out there that are starting to come to light about the information that we all store either on the internet, on our devices, and things like that. And over the course of the last decade, cell phones have come into play a lot, but so has cloud sources and things like that. And we have to really start thinking about, how is all this information relevant? And people ask me, like, what do I need to do to protect my information out there? And yeah, you've got in a cloud, you're backing it up, but is it password protected up there? What if somebody gets access to your cloud? Is it two-factor authenticated in terms of protection? Do you have all these things enabled that allow you, once you get access to your information, to make sure it's you accessing it or an authorized party? So, for example, you may have a Gmail account, but is your Gmail account emailing you or sending you a text when somebody's trying to log in from a different device? So, it's more concerned around questions related to security, the fascination about what information as an investigator I can, extract. And it's also a lot of questions about their own devices. How do you do this? How do you do that? But I'm also a private investigator, so I have a lot of other questions about, what information can we now gather or preserve off of devices that is now available for the private sector versus the public sector, because there's been a lot of advancements in that area as well in recent years.
Oh, I bet. And then I know you published a new book. You're an author, and this one is Forensic Data Collections 2.0. Tell me more about that one.
I've been writing for the last 4 years now. I have always had a passion for writing, gone the self-publishing route because, we all have stuff to say and it's interesting to put it out there. You never know what people's interests are. So I put pen to paper and then, started typing out different topics of interest that, as a investigator, I'm being asked all the time about, sort of, the different types of things that may be encountered in investigations today. And then I submitted that over to a couple of different publications. I'm actually a top contributor at PI Magazine since then. So I have my own cyber sleuthing column that I contribute to each issue. And over the course of 4 years, I've written almost 24 articles that I was able to pull together, compile, and put into a volume that allows people to know what questions to ask when encountering digital evidence, electronic evidence at either a crime scene, or you're encountering it in your day-to-day doing e-discovery matters, maybe walking into a corporation. There's different terminology. So, for example, we don't have a suspect like we do, in a crime scene. We have other key players like stakeholders, data custodians, targeted individuals, things like that we talk about. So I'm able to kind of relate to both of those communities just because I've been involved so long. And then there's the digital forensics community, or the forensics community in general. This has always been in my DNA, digital DNA.
Well, we're super excited that you're speaking at Techno in Wilmington, North Carolina this June, and your panel discussion about E-Discovery looks amazing. Can you talk more about that and what you're planning?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've had several discussions. This is a panel for several of us that have actually spoken together previously. So it's always nice to bring that band back together. We've got Mike Quaterero, Monica Harris, Ignatius Grande on there as well. We come from different backgrounds in a way. Mike's more, from the ASET side, more of the E-Discovery. Monica and I collaborate a lot on the front where she works at Celebrite, and then Ignatius works at BRG. And so we have various backgrounds, but we're talking about ephemeral messaging, something that, has become more and more prevalent over the last 5-6 years. Starting to see a lot of different chat apps, and different types of ways that people communicate, and the privacy that is happening there with messaging apps that basically they're short-term messages, meaning that they will either erase, expire, become unavailable to the parties after a period of time. And what challenges that causes from a preservation collection side from my everyday, what it means in terms of identifying that from an e-discovery standpoint. How do we know what people are using? Sometimes we've got to look at data custodian interviews and ways that people are using this in the business context, what devices that they're using it on. Are there any backups of these messages that disappear that maybe at one point it existed somewhere? Is that on a local device? Is it in the cloud? What if our tools can support that? We're going to talk about all that stuff. And then we're going to talk about case law that has been out there, and just some cases where ephemeral messaging has come up, but also just raise awareness that these apps are out there, that we need to think about them from our perspective. Employers need to think about this from the corporate perspective on people using these devices. And if you're in a highly litigated, audited type of industry like finance or other healthcare, where these types of apps may interfere or cause some challenges with compliance obligations, things like that. So we're going to cover the whole gamut of it.
Oh, it couldn't be more timely, Rob.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff out there, and there's a lot of challenges, but we're all using things like Snapchat, Signal, Telegram, Confide. I mean, there's just a lot of them.
And does anything ever really disappear, Rob?
It does, and it can. It just depends on, you have to look at things, and this is a big topic for me in general, right? You have to look at things in context. There's a lot of focus right now on getting the specifics of what you need. And sometimes, even though a message may be gone from the device, it may still be at the provider for a certain period of time. They may have it where they hold on to it for X number of days or whatever. There may be a legal hold that is something that somebody's obligated to adhere to, which means that you have to take measures to prevent the deletion of this in ways. There's notice of preservation that goes out, a letter of preservation. But really, looking at the way that people save data, their habits, things like that are really important. And yes, things can disappear, they can be deleted, they can be gone. But what other activities were happening around that time, which may tell the story of the data once being there, and giving some context that something existed at some point, and how can we backtrack that? And look, this isn't just for litigation. This is also investigation. It's also, closure for a lot of families that individuals may have been using these applications. I've worked on many cases where communication leading up to somebody's untimely death or an accident, and people want to understand what happened. And so we use the best ways to gather as much information as possible. Sometimes, depending on how these apps work, it is possible to bring back deleted data, but it's also about telling the story from all the other data that we may have on the devices that may be available to help any way we can.
Sure. Oh, I'm sure you've done a lot of stitching, a lot of things together.
Yes.
So you've seen a lot, you've done a lot. What's on your radar for the future?
Yeah, the future is interesting. I mean, I think in this industry, right, we're so fortunate to be in an industry that's constantly morphing. With cryptocurrency one week, and then we have to think about these IoT devices. This stuff is constantly on my mind, and so I think the reality is that the innovation's always going to be important, right? So figuring out ways to make the data more reviewable, right? I always tell people, like when they think about cell phone data, cell phone data is great. And when the investigators were first getting data off of these devices, initially it was the BlackBerry or PDAs, personal digital assistants, and then going into the cell phones, the BlackBerry cell phones now, a lot of this stuff was just information for investigators to get off the devices to work active cases. And now it's gone into the e-discovery realm. I remember early on, there were discussions about even whether or not text messages were relevant. The relevancy is a big aspect of it, but it's always going to be the case that we're evolving, right? We're always going to be technologically advancing. So it's about teaching and appreciating the foundations and giving people the information, the knowledge to know what to ask and who to ask for in terms of assistance. We cannot know everything. There's no way that I have enough time in my day to be an expert in everything. But over the course of the years, I've always lent a hand to people, and I hope that in return, if I ever needed support, and which I have.
This has been awesome. I can't wait for the attendees to hear what you and your panelists have to say. It's going to be great.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. You have a great day, Liz.